Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Amelius, for that wonderful introduction and welcome, Adriano Taborda and the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, Community Engagement, and Equity for inviting me. I feel so grateful to be connected to wonderful students as well as faculty and staff at the U. I appreciate the chance to to talk about my path as an academic and current role at the university. Um, as Amelia said, I'm the director of community engaged research at the Robert J. Jones Urban Research and Outreach Engagement Center, or UROC. I am happy to. Are my slides transitioning? Yeah. Okay. Great. I am happy to work with two other co-directors, Kara Schmidt, who handles the administrative operations of the building, and Makeda Zulu, who is the senior director of community partnerships. Makeda and her family are longtime North Minneapolis residents and community organizers in North Minneapolis, and she is definitely an asset and good friend and colleague. But before I arrived at UROC a long time ago, as Amelia mentioned, I was a doctoral student in political science. I started in 2005 and officially became a CLA alum in 2011. Thank you, Amelia, for reminding me that I need to incorporate that into my introductions. But here I am with my parents at graduation. And I like to just start off talking about how my experience at the U set me up for success during a very jagged, I think, career path. I foolishly thought that I was going to have this very linear path to from an assistant professor to a full professor. But I think the big lesson here is that I learned that the future is unwritten. I tell that to all of my advisees, and that there really is no path except the one that you make. And I strongly believe that my education in CLA really positioned me to take full advantage of opportunities when they arose. And so I have fond memories of political science and being a graduate student. My program encouraged me to be collegial, working together with faculty to support graduate student life and graduate student professional development. I learned to take an interdisciplinary approach to politics because of my committee. Dara Strolovich, when she was here, and Joe Sauce were my advisors. Erica Lee, who was here, was in history, and Chris Federico in psychology. They were a great committee that always pushed me to think about subjects from the margins of democracy. My department had wonderful examples of academics like Catherine Pearson and Larry Jacobs, who would always engage audiences beyond political science and also the academy. And I just thought that was just really cool for them to engage the public in that way. Lastly, I want to just give a special thanks to Dan Kelleher, whose qualitative methods seminar was more than a qualitative method seminar to me. It was probably the most impactful course that I took, as it was a class to approach collaborations, how to be present, how to critically listen. It was one of those classes that really affected me as to be a better friend, to be now as a parent and a guardian, and also just to affirm different forms of knowledge and expertise in rooms. After I graduated, I became a visiting professor at St. Olaf College, courtesy of a teaching fellowship at the Consortium for Faculty Diversity and Liberal Arts Colleges and Higher Education. I then started a tenure track position in political science at the University of Missouri St. Louis. I was there for 15 years. I was the director of the university's public policy and administration program. In this middle picture here, I'm hooding my first advisee on my left, which was a really momentous accomplishment. That's Dr. Timothy Lewis, who was tenured at the Southern Illinois University Edwardsville University, and now is the dean of the College of Social Sciences at Harris-Stowe, one of the oldest HBCUs in the United States, and also is located in St. Louis. And so I enjoyed my time in St. Louis and benefited from great colleagues. But working for the U was a dream, and to return was a dream, so I couldn't pass it up. I was tenured in 2018. My interest turned to doing more work with my friends and partners who worked in social service provision to immigrant and migrant communities. At the time, I was really looking for more guidance on how to do research in partnership with impacted community members. And it just so happened that the American Political Science Association was just starting the Institute for Civically Engaged Research. And I realized that there were just more political scientists, faculty, graduate students at different ranks and at different points in their careers who were also wondering how to do this type of research. And in political science, we had some language, but not enough language as in other related disciplines. And so I was part of an inaugural cohort in 2019. We were located in Tufts for several years, but now recently found a new home at UCLA with support from the Haynes Foundation in California. And so I became a co-director of the Institute with Peter Levine at Tufts and Sam Magic at the John Jay College. And I'm on my third year. This picture on the right is us at UCLA with our most recent cohort of professors at different ranks and graduate students in different subfields, and also institutions, which we loved. After getting tenure, I devoted a lot of my time to research with asylum seekers from Latin American countries on the role of accompaniment in political activism. And so in 2020, my friend and community partner, Maria Torres Wedding, and I started a group that provided mutual support for immigrants who expressed an interest in resisting this rise of using ankle monitors when they were seeking asylum. And so it wasn't a research opportunity. I want to make sure about that. It was really a time when I felt that Maria and I needed to sort of push our work aside. She was a social service provider in that space and a bilingual therapist, to just be present with our asylum seeker colleagues now to design something that provided support rapidly. And so at the time, the group started out with 19 people, but now the group is still meeting and it's over 175 people. And they're from Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. Our meetings are conducted all in Spanish and Haitian Creole. We have a couple of Mayan speakers who are bilingual Spanish speakers. And the group provides three things. One is legal advice for people who are navigating immigration systems, while also connecting them to bilingual therapists and medical professionals who provide forensic evidence about the physical impact of trauma, which we use in their asylum cases. And in some cases, that medical evidence proved to win asylum, which was a great accomplishment, very rare accomplishment. It also provided an outlet for political activism and resistance. We helped 50 people get their ankle monitors removed, and also helped the group, which they named themselves Migrantes Unidos, to stage a protest against ICE and ICE's private prison contractor, BI Incorporated, and did lots of rights awareness campaigns in St. Louis. Our work right now is centered on political education. We're working with 2 bilingual therapists and specifically female members of the group to provide support and discussion to explore this intersection between experiences with domestic violence and the immigration system. And so now they and their stories are positioned in strength to better inform medical professionals, social service providers, teachers, and child care providers in St. Louis. And I say all this because I think if I didn't have these opportunities, I didn't have the experiences working with our asylum seeker colleagues, or the training in political science to think about power, authority, identities. I don't think this job at UROC would have ever appeared on my radar if I was strictly just an academic, nor do I think I would have been a good fit at UROC. And so what I would like to do now is sort of transition and talk about UROC, and talk about its history, because I think it's important and relevant to how we can support and what we offer to faculty and community partners. So UROC was forming at the time when I was in graduate school. And so I've enjoyed learning about the history through the experience of others. Some of you in this space today might have been part of UROC's origins, or at least heard of them. So around 2006, the University of Minnesota decided to create a place that was being called the North Side Partnership, the University North Side Partnership near Plymouth and Penn, which is where we are right now. And it was going to be this proposed partnership with the city of Minneapolis and Hennepin County to build and run a $65 million mental health facility and research center. So these conversations included President Bob Brunink's, the Minneapolis mayor at the time, community leaders, a county health facility, which now is North Point, and Robert Jones. Robert Jones was part of the U's administration. UROC is named after him. He is now the president of the University of Washington. So Minnesota's spokesman recorder from the beginning, this newspaper documented that the university's vision was not universally shared among different communities in North Minneapolis. There was a great deal of mistrust rooted in concerns that the university had ulterior motives behind the UNP to exploit Black lives and knowledge for research and profit. Nothing out of the ordinary, very consistent of what we know about this relationship between research and Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities. So by 2007, and a lot of back and forth, the Pioneer Press declared that the University Northside Partnership was done. So even though there was a lot of concerns, there were still many people who supported it, and it's having something owned in the U in the neighborhood, and so they were disappointed, and this opened a dam to a flood of long-held grievances against the university. But in response to these challenges, I think the university leaders did something very rare and courageous, which was, rather than turning their backs or just saying like, all right, we're done, we're just washing our hands with this, they provided time and space to listen to community residents on what they wanted the center to be and look like. And so Northside residents and leaders got together to voice three main things. One, they rejected this idea of a research center acting as a community savior, or a center that would conduct research about North Minneapolis, but not include North Minneapolis residents as partners. They didn't want a research center to come in and solve problems without working together with community members. The second is that residents didn't want these one-offs. That is, they wanted the U to be more present in North Minneapolis before, during, and especially after research was done, or when a grant is not awarded. Right. And so, and then the third, I think they wanted the U to change how it thought about urban communities. From what I gathered in talking about others who were here in this process at the time, the closing of the General College was viewed as this betrayal to the Black community. And so this moment was a chance for North Minneapolis residents to point out that, hey, you know, the university does a lot of outreach and engagement, especially to agricultural communities at the time. But what about urban communities? What are you doing for North Minneapolis and other urban communities around? So UROC was created with this intentional community input, even when designing the building. And so here are some pictures of the start. UROC used to be this strip mall. And you know, the biggest space, if you've been to it, and I invite you to come if you haven't, it is this big room where we do a lot of presentations. Representative Ilhan Omar was here as a guest in exhibiting the work of art done by local high school students. She was in that space last night. Anyway, it used to be a grocery store, which I think is really cool now that it's repurposed for community gatherings. Construction started in 2009, and Lisette is going to share a link. If you have time, it's a video that shows more of the history and also the intentional input of residents into the actual design of the community. So thank you, Lisette, for sharing that. When you watch the video, there are three things I want to point out about this intentional community design that were addressed to address past harms. First, there is an emphasis on transparency. And so when you come to UROC, you'll notice that there are big windows along Plymouth and around the building. And that was because residents wanted to have windows because it was meant to ensure that the community can see what was going on inside the building. And so there is this belief that the research center had these ulterior motives of conducting experiments. And so residents wanted to actually see inside the building. Two, there was this emphasis of being a welcoming space. Our lobby is a warm, welcoming gathering. Residents are welcome to sit in, have a cup of coffee and tea. We have a beautiful gallery that's usually used to showcase local art and photography. And the third thing that residents wanted was that the space was going to be used for convening partnerships between the university and community. Um, so while the building was being built, UROC founders were meeting to talk about the function of the actual building. And so at the time, they used the mortgage crisis to have this discussion. And so much of this work and much of the success should be attributed to UROC's first director, Dr. Irma McLaurin, among others, including my dear colleague Makeda Zulu, and I listed the people who were also part of UROC's origin. Irma convened this group of stakeholders, concerned community residents, university faculty and staff, county and city representatives, nonprofits, to talk about the economic and also social dimensions of the mortgage crisis impact, and also to consider how might research contribute to a better understanding of these effects. And the university conducted 2 years of listening sessions through focus groups, interviews, and informal conversations to learn from multiple community and university stakeholders to see what would they want UROC to be. And what its work. And so it was really this work that set the tone of collaboration and reciprocity in UROC's community engaged research and outreach. And so we're informed and rooted in that history. And I think that history is important because it really focuses on our strategic priorities today. So first, we continue to deepen our community partnerships, trust and reciprocity between the university and North Minneapolis residents. We also want to sustain research projects that aim to provide mutual benefits to academics, their community partners, and also UROC. When we work with academic community teams, we discuss and design ways to amplify the reach and relevance of their research activities. Third, I like to think of our work as this constant reminder to the university and its role in urban community partnerships. That it has investments, actual investments in North Minneapolis, and also it has a commitment to equity and inclusion and community engagement that goes beyond corporate partnerships. It involves grassroots community organizations and partnerships with them. And so we offer our building as this extension of university resources and opportunities. And lastly, we recognize that for many people, community engagement is another word for extraction, for exploitation, for erasure. And so we certainly don't think that, the partnerships that we have, the engagement work that we have resolved past struggles, tensions, or harms. Rather, I think we make sure to remember that extraction, harm, and erasure are always present when working with Black, Brown, and Indigenous community members. And so I think as a reminder, we're dedicated to continually think, how do we structure support, critical listening, and also opportunities to heal in our outreach and research programs? So to do this, Makeda and I work hard to meet with prospective academic community partners. And our work mainly involves using UROC as a buffer or a safeguard to North Minneapolis residents' time, expertise, and energy. This is where I think being a political scientist and paying attention to things like power and authority really help our role in screening projects. I like to use the work of grounded normative theorists and the work of Brooke Ackerley and her co-authors on ethically sensible partnerships as guiding principles. And so we look for projects that use a variety of methods to collect and analyze data, to broaden and deepen the range of insights, and also the actors, the political actors, where the academics understand that they're not the only knowledge producers in the room and on teams, and also working with academics who are dedicated to developing and revising claims about data and also what they're seeing in the field through ongoing discussions with their partners, and also to be held accountable by their community partners and what they're saying in academic spaces and publics when their partners are not there. And so when projects don't necessarily meet this criteria, we don't shame them, we don't shun them away. We like to refer them to other centers who do support research that maybe falls below that threshold that we're looking for. And so a UROC has a home in the Office of Public Engagement. So we work with the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs, CURA, in the Humphrey School, and also the Center for Community Engaged Learning, who provides professional development and training to help faculty and staff and community partners get a little more development and training in how to do engaged teaching and learning. So we are interested in reaching out to faculty who are interested in deepening their engagement through their research. And I think we do that through supporting the life course of community engaged research, and also recognizing that there are different pathways in which those projects form. And I think we're also trying to reimagine how our space at UROC could be more relevant and useful for North Minneapolis residents. And so to sustain our current affiliate research projects, we have reconvened UROC's Community Advisory Board. COVID has still been a brutal force that has still impacting UROC and North Minneapolis residents and our partners here. And so we're just coming out of that and seeing how we can be a better partner and a better center. But we have invited new members. We have 15 members, 8 of which are community members who work with youth and community health, grassroots advocacy, as well as Representative Fu Lee, who represents UROC's district. We also have 7 faculty from the medical school, social work, curriculum instruction, and the Earl Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. And so I invite, the terms are 2 years. And so I say this because if there are anyone who are interested in serving on our advisory board, and I say this to students and faculty and staff, please reach out. I would love to talk to you about that. So our advisory board usually helps us sustain the research that provides mutual benefits for academics, their community partners, and UROC. Our affiliate research projects tend to compensate their community partners. They don't necessarily just think of them as research participants. We affiliate with projects that decenter academic researchers in projects, and also incorporate ways to share their research with audiences beyond academics, and to make sure that the results are useful and impactful for the public. We also expect affiliates to find ways to help UROC through seeking external funding, making UROC more visible through their own publications, and also sharing their results in community events. And so currently, we have 45 affiliates that come from 29 academic departments and colleges. They're mostly from the medical school, nursing, College of Education and Human Development, social work, and public health. But there is a growing number of people from CLA. So again, thank you, Amelis, for helping me bridge this connection. We also have faculty from the law school, business school, the Humphrey School, and public health. And so there's currently 60 research partnerships that we have with North Minneapolis residents groups, and also across the metro. Some of the ideas our affiliates have used to uphold this reciprocal relationship with UROC and North Minneapolis have been making UROC more visible through their own research publications. That's something that we want to try to demonstrate. Some have offered professional development and mentorship and panel discussions on a particular topic. Others, when they do have the resources, incorporate UROC as key personnel and grants. Several of our affiliates participate in planning committees or programs at UROC, such as our podcast, The Rules of Engagement, which Makeda hosts. You should check that out on our website. And most affiliates, through their research, give their time in North Minneapolis as board members and volunteers. That research sort of involves them into the fabric of North Minneapolis. Um, we're also utilizing our resources to support graduate students who are pursuing their dissertations that involve community engaged research. We recently relaunched UROC's Dissertation Fellowship that honors the work of Dr. Josie R. Johnson. We received 19 strong applications across 12 departments and programs, and we are happy to support 3 advanced graduate students who I show you here, 2 of which are from the College of Liberal Arts, Isabella Urtifa in sociology and Jamie Zolik in anthropology. Hong Nelson is from the Department of Curriculum and Instruction, and the 3 are wonderful graduate students, and we look forward to doing more with graduate students. So part of our research awards agenda, we will continue to support more graduate students find affiliate faculty over the next 5 years through our research awards program. Each year, we're looking to award 3 fellowships, each providing a graduate student with a $10,000 stipend, which they can use however they wish. We really want to uphold financial freedom. We're also looking to support 2 to 3 more academic community partnerships that already exist in your own work, but maybe are not connected to UROC. And if they strongly align with our affiliate and reciprocity expectations, we're looking to fund 2 to 3 projects around $15,000 to $20,000 to a project. We're also looking to support 3 to 4 projects that start within our own neighborhood and looking for an academic partner. So in typically how this happens in our in community engaged research, oftentimes the academic initiates it. We wanted to create a space in which community can initiate their own ideas and projects that don't necessarily need to start with an academic researcher. And so resources are given to community residents to develop their own projects to address issues deemed important by them. And lastly, I want to say we're helping teams on how to sustain the outreach and impact of their work when research is over. So Partners for Pain is one of UROC's longest affiliate research programs. It's a research project led by Ronnie Evans and Brent Leninger at the U, which explores how people talk and experience pain and develop community-driven ways to manage pain and heal from physical and mental pain. They are at a stage where they want to strip away the research parts and work towards into a demonstration project. And so their work has pushed UROC to help reimagine our space and being relevant for residents in North Minneapolis. And so we're repositioning Partners for Pain away from just being an affiliate to a program partner who is going to provide ongoing services and consultations at UROC to help people in the neighborhood navigate their struggles with pain and focus on improving their well-being and find ways to heal. So that is another way, if you're thinking about what is the legacy of my research and creative works, where does it find a home? I think that's another way that we at UROC can help. So if you're interested in learning more about our affiliate program, our dissertation fellowship, and ways to just expand or deepen your own research and creative works, I would really enjoy speaking with you. I want to thank you for the time and the outlet to speak with you today. I really appreciate it. I hope we stay in touch. Thank you again.
Adriano. Amazing presentation. Also, a lot of really great information. Personally, love to see the background and history of how these centers come into place. Your own, history. I agree with you on the idea of nonlinear career trajectory.
It's the only kind. It's the only
Yeah,
kind.
I know. I feel like I'm there with you. I'm like associate director, PhD student. We're gonna get there when we get there, right?
Get
It's gonna
there.
happen.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So we are going to open it up for Q&A. So if anyone has a question in the chat, you can drop it there, or if you'd like to raise your hand, unmute, you can do it that way as well. We're trying to open it up for folks how they like to engage. And I'll give a moment or two just to see if we have anybody with questions. Okay. Well, folks can still put their questions. Oh, Amelia, you had one?
Not a question, but just a comment. So one, Adriano, thank you for doing this. This is great. And I remember some of the challenges with UROC and what led there, and I knew Robert Jones, and but the college is launching soon a new strategic plan, and in the part of the plan that deals with public engagement, it names that engagement takes time. You said it took 2 years to do this. And also a core part of our plan is acknowledging that the college, but more proper, the university has done some things that we need to kind of acknowledge and try to repair. And that repair piece is a key part of a lot of engagement efforts in the college. So the story you told reinforces what we want to do in CLA, what we have done in many ways, but what we want to continue to do. So I just thank you for naming that.
Great. So, Natan, I do see your hand, but I'm going to get to Alexandra's question, and then we'll
Yeah.
go to Lee. I think it's Leanne, if I pronounce that incorrectly. I'm so sorry. We can clarify later. So, Alexandra asks if a researcher is interested in community collaboration from another area, for example, South Minneapolis or St. Paul, would UROCs be suitable, even if it was a different geographic location?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's something that we are. Our first priority is to North Minneapolis, our footprint, but we also support community engaged research and partnerships, especially those issues that may affect North Minneapolis and groups that are found in North Minneapolis. And so we don't necessarily have a geographic criteria that would not work with someone because they fall outside of it. So yeah, we have, so there are two projects that I can think of: Central Minnesota, um, uh, Xavier Vasquez, and some researchers at Partners for Pain are working on a project that's outside of North Minneapolis. And then there's some partnerships with St. Paul public schools that some researchers are doing in education through UROC. So we welcome and want to work with you. So I hope we can talk another time.
Yes, thank you. And then on the slide deck, Adriano's contact information is also there if you have interest, Alexandra. Natan, I'll pass it to you if you are okay with unmuting and asking the question.
Yeah, thanks for this very interesting presentation. You talked about the long history of suspicion from the local community towards the university. Can you say more about the current state of that suspicion and what you think it's most important for the university as a community to be doing to continue addressing it?
Yeah, sure. So the the suspicion before was that the biggest theory was that we were going to be conducting experiments in the basement of UROC. And I don't want to be flippant to that. I mean, I think that there's real worries about that, but we were not, and my colleagues were not. And I say that because that suspicion is still present in today. It takes on different modes and different narratives, but that role of the university using UROC as a way to steal ideas and expertise from black entrepreneurs, from artists, and to take that and own it separately and not share that publicity and profit from that. That's present. I think with the emphasis on which partnerships are more deserving than others. I think that is something that has really captured the attention of our North Minneapolis organizations and also residents. I think it's this. Well, what about us, right? What about us? We've been here. We've been asking you for partnership, and yet your attention is someplace else. I think that's another current narrative that people are really worried about. And secondly, I think with COVID, I'm sorry. third to third, I think COVID really hurt us in the sense that there was, these three areas that UROC wanted to pursue, but because of COVID and because of disruption in our leadership, the work that that UROC wanted to do was disrupted, and so I think residents are waiting on seeing where those projects go, and so the work is going on. It's just taking a really long time to follow through there.
All right, great. Thank you. For the sake of time, Leanne, I'll have you and Adriano maybe connect either in the chat or via email later about the projects, the Northside community projects. Adriano, again, thank you for being here. We're really, really grateful on behalf of all the work that you are doing. Again, really trying to embed practices that build trust, that offer the community resources. I know North Minneapolis has a deep history in the Twin Cities, and it's really great that UROC is centered there and has the opportunity, again, to gain that trust and really serve not only North Minneapolis, but other urban areas as well. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to pass the mic back over to Emilius, and he's going to introduce our next guest speakers. But thank you again.
Yes, thank you. And
Thank you.
I think just reflecting really quickly on Natan's question, some of the concerns about the university go beyond research. I remember being there several years ago at a meeting, and people are upset, and rightly so. We have a lot of African American student athletes that come to the University of Minnesota, and there were concerns about to what extent they graduated, to what extent we cared for them beyond what they would do on the football field or basketball court. So UROC, because of where it is, takes a lot of it's a focus of people who have a variety of issues about the university because things have happened over a long time. And so I appreciate their ability to lean in and listen to folks and try to move in a positive direction. So I'm going to introduce our next set of speakers. I believe that leaders are not just those individuals with titles that denote positional leadership. Leaders can be those who do not have titles, but who step up when called upon and meet the moment. I first became aware of Luchadores and Marcha, and apologies for my poor Spanish. It's been years since I've taken it. First became aware of them most likely in the fall with an Instagram post. As the semester continued, I would see their name from time to time in various contexts. When Operation Metro Surge began, and to a large degree even before that, they collectively met the moment to support the university community in ways that were needed during unprecedented events in modern times. I invited them to share their story to uplift their work, as it's firmly grounded in our college's values, particularly with regard to respect, diversity, and social justice. Speaking for myself, I'm proud of what they have done and will continue to do, and I'm honored that they agreed to share their story with us today. So with that, I would like to invite our next presentation from three CLA students who are leaders in the Luchadores, and the students include Julia Laura Versaw, Anthony Marquez, and Anaí Nunez. So thank you. Floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Emilius, for that introduction. I wanted to begin with acknowledging something Emilius said earlier, which was how we haven't had much time or much space to reflect on the traumatic moment we faced. So again, thank you so much for allowing us to do this as students of the university, but also broader members of the community. And I wanted to take the time to ground this conversation in what this work means for us, not just as students, but again, members of the broader Latino community in Minnesota, which is directly impacted by immigration enforcement and systemic displacement. And the ideas and the response that we will be discussing today is not just theoretical, but it's about how we as a university-based collective and how we as students responded in real time to a moment of crisis and our ongoing work in the community. We like to emphasize that we began this work beforehand and we tried to prepare as well as we could and not act as a crisis response. Um, our work also sits at the intersection of scholarship and action. So we are focused on what it means to study systems of power and then being able to hold those systems accountable and to communities experiencing them in real life. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So, beginning with who are we? Luchadores en Marcha is a collective that includes students, staff, and faculty within the Department of Chicano and Latino Studies here at the University of Minnesota. A key framework that we use is that we call theory to action. This means that we don't treat academic knowledge as something that's abstract or isolated, and instead we actively translate what we learn about colonialism, what we learn about migration, racial capitalism, into an organizing strategy and real world interventions in real world situations. And over the past school year, our campaigns have focused on kind of these three core ideas, including overall safety, not just physical safety, but also legal, emotional, and community-based safety. We like to emphasize that safety is not just physical, but it's also mental. And then political education in creating accessible spaces where students can and community members can understand what's happening and the structure behind it. So this includes the workshops that we've done, teach-ins, rapid response, information sharing, and more that we'll talk about soon. And then community care, so recognizing that organizing isn't just about resistance, but also about sustaining the people, which included our mutual aid efforts, emotional support, and ensuring people have the resources that they need during these crises. We like to make sure that all of these areas are interconnected, and we emphasize that you cannot have effective organizing without having these informed communities, and you can't sustain movements without community care. And if we can go to the next slide, thank you. For background and context, to critically understand our response, it's important to understand the scale and the intensity of Operation Metro Surge. This operation, as many of you know, represented the largest immigration enforcement deployment in United States history, involving approximately 3,000 to 4,000 federal agents. And what distinguished this moment was not just the number of agents, but the tactics that were used. So there was a shift towards aggressive and highly visible enforcement that was made to create fear. There was also less targeted raids, which we had kind of expected beforehand, but instead, enforcement became more widespread and less predictable. There was documented hostility towards legal observers, and there were detentions regardless of citizenship status, which raised concerns about constitutional and civil rights concerns. The impact on the community was very, very immediate and very severe. There was a very clear disruption to daily life. People were afraid to go to work, people were afraid to attend school or access basic services. Families were forced to make rapid decisions about safety and mobility. And then the economic consequences, which meant local businesses experienced losses due to decreased traffic and workforce instability, and entire sectors of Minneapolis local economy were affected and disrupted.
So next we're going to be getting into how did we respond. We did a multitude of things to begin with. We started with Know Your Rights trainings, which went over how to interact with ICE, discussing things such as rights. You have the right to remain silent, the right to deny a search. We emphasize to not run away from an ICE agent if you're ever in contact with them. Do not escalate the situation and just try to act and respond as calmly as possible. We went over different strategies in planning, such as always carry a whistle with you. Make sure you have a group of people you can check in with. Tell, hey, I'm going to go out for the day. I'll be back around 3. If I'm not back, can you please check in with me? We also went over legal observer trainings, which emphasize documenting evidence safely and responsibly, how to hold a camera, what to do if an agent's in front of you. providing assistance to vulnerable individuals to make sure that we have that documentation for later instances if we are able to hold those legally accountable. We also did in-class mini Know Your Rights trainings. We wanted to make sure we could expand accessibility to these trainings, which we did so by reaching out to different departments, faculty, staff. It kind of turned into them reaching out to us as well, and it kind of started being spread by word of mouth. We tailored these trainings specifically to students and faculty. We would teach them how to identify a public or private space within campus. We discussed if ICE agents come to the classroom, what you should do, how to establish a plan, who to delegate to what. And we also engaged the broader campus community as best as we could. Next, we had rapid response, which focused on geographical signal chats with updates and actions. So, for example, there was a signal chat for the St. Paul campus, a signal chat for West Bank, each with their own different groups of people who would give each other alerts when they knew ICE activity was nearby or on campus. And lastly, we focused on community care, which these signal chats were for students who wanted to request walks or rides if they didn't feel safe doing so by themselves. And they also focus on mutual aid. Next, we wanted to emphasize the role of faculty and staff. So number one was classroom planning. We would tell everyone, have somebody that's going to be at the door. If ICE agents come to the door, who's going to speak to them? Who's going to call the Monarca hotline? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Number two, how to bring this into classes and curriculum. Draw attention to what's going on in the moment. Number three, it's important for faculty and staff to provide a sort of space and resources for students and other individuals during this time. It's very traumatic, as Julia said. A lot of people didn't know how to react or respond to what was happening. Number four, showing support for student initiatives and engagement, which kind of coincides with number five, use platform and power. Kind of as Amelia said in his introduction, as students, it's hard for us to be taken serious at all times because we don't have a certain position. So with faculty and staff using their platforms and voices to kind of uplift us and say, hey, these people deserve that respect as well because they're trying to do work, it's very, very beneficial, and we appreciate that a lot. Number six, sharing experiences and knowledge around organizing. Once again, as students, many people don't know where to begin when it comes to organizing. So we appreciate any advice. And when we hear these experiences and gain more knowledge, it's always beneficial to help put our theories into action and continue working on base building. Number seven, ensuring supportive systems are in place. It's very helpful, once again, to have these systems in times of crisis. And number eight, accountability, just recognizing your role and how and what you can do to help and uplift the others around you. Next, we're going to talk about a few challenges. So some of the institutional limitations we faced was a slow university response and some unclear policies. It was hard to kind of dictate what we could or couldn't do when the university wasn't giving us a direct answer to a lot of questions we had. There was also the difference in urgency versus accuracy. With Operation Metro Surge, so many things were happening all at once that it was kind of hard to just dictate, well, do we want to make sure that we're providing the most accurate information by spending so much time researching, so much time making sure that we're refining all these little details? Or is it urgent that we just get out all that we know, get out as much as we can in this urgent situation? Which kind of goes along with constantly changing circumstances. You would see things all the time. It was ICE agents were doing this, or this just happened. How are we going to respond to that in such a accurate but also urgent manner? There's also a very large emotional toll on organizers and students. Everyone is still trying to work, get through their daily lives as well, being faced with all of these things. It's very hard to deal with it emotionally, especially when you're dealing with misinformation and information overload. It was very hard. I know for me, like I would just go on social media and there was another video or another instance, another news article, news report, and everywhere that you went, it's kind of hard to escape the reality of what's going on. You're being faced with it. It's thrown at you constantly. I also want to acknowledge the difference between help versus support. If you use the word help, a lot of people can misconstrue that as you're pitying them or they need help, when rather you are just trying to support them, which can be looked at as almost like uplifting someone. You're holding them, giving them that balance beam to work on. So I think that's very important to acknowledge. And lastly, not being listened to, crisis response versus planning ahead. Luchadores was doing a lot of work prior to Operation Metro Surge with Know Your Rights trainings before it even happened and came to Minneapolis, because we were trying to prep and prepare for what was going to come. But at that time, a lot of people were just thinking, it's not happening here. It's not our problem in this moment. So let's not worry about it or prioritize those trainings at this time. And then when Operation Metro Surge did hit, a lot of people were just trying to respond to that crisis and then wanted to become engaged with the trainings. And we wanted to also work with coordination with broader campus community, ensuring involvement from everyone, getting the word out, which once again can be difficult as a newer organization and also as students. It was hard to just try and coordinate with everybody, get people to listen to us, platform us, share a voice.
Hello, my name is Anthony Marquez, and I'll be talking about the key takeaways and lessons that we learned in Luchadores during Operation Metro Surge, before, during, and after. We learned that movements must center those most impacted and who decides priorities and how. When we center movements around those that are most affected, it ensures effective and sustainable solutions tailored to the root of the problem, not just the symptoms. And it prevents individuals from being excluded in decision-making or moving their voices underground. This notion validates the lived experience and prioritizes firsthand essentials that for an outsider could go completely unaddressed. A simple example of this was for safety planning and DOPA forms that we included in our trainings and presentations. It wasn't just know your rights and upstander information for citizens, but it included information about how someone who's at risk, an individual who has a family, could create safety nets and networks for the event if someone were to be deported. Because essentially that is what was missing from a lot of these early trainings, is that it told you what to do when you're confronted by ICE, but it didn't tell you how to handle the after effects. Another important thing was that safety is both physical and emotional, as Julia said earlier. Many of us understand the feeling of losing someone very close in our life. Now, think about how you felt and the impact it made on your daily life. Operation Metro Surge resulted in nearly 4,000 arrests, where close to half were deported. Many in the community were burdened with not only the idea of losing someone, but are responsible for picking up the pieces that were left behind. And not only that, thousands of families were unable to leave their homes for weeks to months, creating feelings of isolation. As students, educators, and faculty, we have to be aware of our environment and always consider how the past several months could have affected the mental health of individuals, and know pathways or resources for support at the university, which was an important part of how we included mental health emphasis in our trainings and in class visits, and how we bring notions of taking care of yourself, not only just through sleeping and eating, but also spending time doing things that you enjoy. A lot of the things that are going on in our environment were very, very stressful to us. But sometimes you need a simple reminder, a gentle reminder, just to sometimes slow down and do things that are important for your mental health. We also learned that creating a strong infrastructure is vital. Organizations like Monarca had began building their infrastructure as soon as January 2025, and if not sooner. And this was vital in the response from our community before, during, and after Operation Metro Surge. At the university, Luchadores, like Anay mentioned, had began our trainings in October, when we noticed an increase in immigration rates in places like Bakersfield, California, where my uncles live, or also in places like Chicago. Although we weren't getting, much attendance, we only had 10 to 20 people attending these large trainings. it was important for how we were going to navigate through the upcoming months in December when we came back and we were like, guys, we need to organize differently. There's no way we're going to be effective if we only have 20 people coming to our visits. That's why we decided to reorganize, do it differently, and instead approach teachers and hopefully giving us some class time to train their students in Know Your Rights and Upsurge trainings and safety planning. And that was largely effective to making these trainings accessible. Next slide, please. Thank you. Along with that, faculty and staff engagement helped strengthen and spread the impact of our trainings. Professors opened their classrooms for our trainings, and we were able to reach so many more students through our classroom visits, providing access to Know Your Rights and Upstandard training, education, whistles, signal chats, and channels for mutual aid. And if it wasn't for these professors that welcomed us into their space, we simply just took 20, 30 minutes of time, but we would not have been able to raise the awareness of Operation Metro Surge and the impact of immigration enforcement or federal occupation in our city. Personally, I would feel more comfortable if I knew that there was a large portion of students around me that also had education in what to do if there is ICE activity on campus. Simply just having a whistle to alert people around that there is activity that was ongoing helped me provide me a lot of relief. And I know that it was also the same for other people in the campus community. Again, we were reminded that accessibility is so important. Professors that allowed us to go into their classroom helped firsthand bring the accessibility to these trainings. And we applaud and thank them so much for allowing us to do that, because simply we would not have been able to bring so many of these resources to students on campus. And then also working with community partners and large organizations like Monarca, when we invited them onto campus with their highly, highly trained upstanders and Know Your Rights facilitators, we wouldn't have been able to kind of build this credibility, and that our students in Luchadores, me, Julia, Anna, and others were able to attend these sometimes once a week, where we are able to feel confident to teach this information to other students. And then now that we're in April and Operation Metro Surge has maybe on paper ended, we're still reminded that, ICE is still in Minnesota. We are at the same levels before, we're not at the same levels as we were before Operation Metro Surge, and that we still see around 400 to 500 ICE agents in Minnesota. Previously, it was only at around 100. And when we saw the enforcement in Chicago earlier last year, they only had around 600 agents in the city. And so we want to remind ourselves that this is still an ongoing thing. And how is Luchadores going to continue to respond when the semester ends, during the summer, and into the next year? And that is what we think would be important, is that we hope that we don't just move on from this moment and forget about the impact of Operation Metro Surge, but have education about immigration enforcement be standardized and acknowledged in each classroom, facilitating an environment and culture that recognizes the safety of vulnerable students and community members. We also hope to build stronger community and collaboration. During this time, I and other members of Luchadores have built solidarity with different student groups, different communities, different departments, and faculty to help build a stronger community where we're able to lean on each other in a time of need. We wouldn't be here today without the invitation of Amelius, and be able to talk about the impact that we've had ourselves on what is it like to build power and to organize as students and take our theory into action. And so I thank you so much for allowing us to have this space also. And that goes into the investment in student leadership. In the Department of Chicano and Latino Studies, students are highly encouraged to find ways in which we can engage with the community And our outreach coordinator, Lisa Sasaragosa, has been an essential person in pushing students to use their voice. And I have nothing but gratitude for her leadership and ability to influence students. Dr. Jessica Lopez Lyman, a Chicano feminist artist and scholar in the department, was also responsible for helping me find my voice and and tell me that you have power inside of you. You just need to find it and you need to use it. And I wouldn't be here today without either of those two. And that just speaks to the strong history and the strong integrity that faculty have in our department of engaging students and helping them find the the theory to action pathway that we have adopted here in Luchadores. And then also recognizing that peer-to-peer relationships build trust and increase participation. Luchadores were not only Luchadores were not the only students either unhappy with the university administrators and the lack of directive, but also helped to set up systems for mutual aid and campus safety for students at risk. Students in the Mutual Aid Collective set up campus walks and collected food donations for students in response to Metro Surge. And so I also want to shout out them and highlight them for the work that they did. And I found a lot of great relationships with other like-minded students, and we were able to sit down and talk about how we're able to build power on campus and find ways to support one another. Again, reinforcing the idea that together we keep each other safe, and that safety is a collective action that we all must partake in order to build these environments that we imagine and thrive in. And again, just to remind that this work is ongoing for Luchadores. And after what we experienced these past several months in the community as people from Minnesota, from first-gen families, as a child of immigrants, I think that this will only be a moment in which we build off of. And we're looking forward to the future and next semester and what Luchadores is able to do and help uplifting and amplifying these voices that we are essentially a part of.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, all three of you, Julia, Anthony, Anai. I appreciate just all the work that you've done. We're going to open up to questions, but I just also want to comment how Chicano Latino Studies is a smaller department as part of the Bridges department. So having such powerhouse students come out of that department really just continues this really strong legacy of student activism at the University of Minnesota, particularly in the College of Liberal Arts. So I appreciate all of you taking up the courage and the work to be part of that legacy, to help support and protect fellow students, your own selves on campus with everything that's going on. So just extending a word of gratitude before we get into questions, and just highly impressed and always inspired by students who do this work. And so cheers to all of you, your collaborators in this work, and for your organization and your voices. So with that, a little shout out. I just will open it up to questions, but I thank all three of you. But if we have any questions in the chat, we'll start there. Otherwise, I have my own thoughts that go beyond, accolades and thank yous, but I'll leave it to the chat first. Okay. I don't know why it does that. Like I'm not thumbsing down anybody's Zoom. I need you to get it right. Okay, so Alex posed in the chat. I know the timeline is a little bit off for students, but will you be moving forward with UNIDO's Monarca Democracy Defense Training?
So I have a relationship with Jose from Manilos, who is working on this project about democracy defense training, and their response to the midterm elections and what they anticipate to see. I think that that's conversations that we are about to have here at the end of the semester and into the summer, of how we can bring Unidos Monarca democracy defense training onto campus and make students aware of their effort and what they're organizing in that realm.
Thank you, Anthony. And while we wait for anyone else, I also was highly impressed the theory to action. Again, my own discipline being American Studies, I think this is a really important concept that people bring to the forefront, that here in academia, it's not just reading books, it's not just, crossing a stage at the culmination of your journey. It's even while you're a student, putting what you're learning to action in order to kind of benefit the community. I just open up to any of you to comment on how that's impacted, like your studies in CLS have, really deeply impacted, or if there's a specific scholar that inspired some of your work in Luchadores.
Yeah, I think, like Anthony was saying, Dr. Jessica Lopez Lyman is one of our favorite professors, I have to say, in the department. And she's also our advisor for another organization that Anthony and I are part of called Mujeres Activas en Letras y Cambio Social, which is a Chicana Latina feminist organization on campus. So she has helped us so much in amplifying our voices, not only amplifying it, but being able to find it and being able to have the confidence and motivation to get out there. I had a class with her last semester. It was barrio culture, and it was really powerful to see how she connected with the community and how she connected these ideas of culture and these ideas of history with our current situation, and our not only grounding it in our own lived experiences and our own stories, but future implications. And she has been someone that's incredibly motivational, incredibly supportive, and just really helpful in times like these, for sure.
Thank you, Julia. We did have one more question in the chat, mostly about the mutual aid. And Natan asked, like, what is your understanding of where is the most pressing need in terms of mutual aid, legal aid, and your thoughts about places for the university community and institutional action?
Yeah, we did a training a while back with Student Legal Services, so they have a lot of good resources connecting with Unidos and Monarca's legal line. I can link the phone number down below, but that has been a really good resource for us. Is they have not only the rapid response line, but they have legal support that is open, I believe, Monday to Friday. They are open to questions. Obviously, it's not necessarily representation, but it's support and it's help with questions and understanding how to navigate these situations.
Great. Again, thank you three for being here, giving your own efforts, actions, your voice to this important cause. It's really annoying that we have this cause in general, but I'm so glad that you're all here to support it. With that, we're going to go ahead and move to our break, but just extending thank yous for your work, this presentation, the time you put into this presentation, and sharing with our community. So thank you all, and best of luck as the semester wraps. You are almost there, but we'll kind of take it from there and take our break. But thank you again.
Anthony has his hand up. I'm not.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry.
Nope. That's takes a village.
Okay.
Anthony.
Yeah, something I just wanted to share real quick before we take our break here is that Luchadores is currently organizing and planning a symposium where we essentially want to create a healing space for community members to come and share their real experience about what happened from their own voice. And this is in response to a lot of how the narrative was built around Operation Metro Surge. And what we want to do is we want to recenter that narrative again to the ones who were most effective and have them tell us what it was like during a federal occupation and what had occurred to them in their role as either a business owner or an educator. And so here we're creating the space where we're going to connect scholarship in the first panel where we have our professors, Dr. Patino, who's in Ridges, Dr. Jessica Lopez Lyman, and Dr. Suriel connect the historical context to the ongoing events and explain the tactics and where they originate from and things like that, while also having a community panel to follow where we have Amelia Gonzalez Avalos, the executive director of Unidos, come, educators from Academia La Paz, which is a school district that's a Latino charter school, in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and then also business owners. And so we want to extend that invitation for you guys to attend if you like, and then also for your students. We plan to have a protest demonstration at 3:30 outside Scott Hall, where we'll actually march to Hanson Hall to then reinforce the idea that we're here, we're students on campus that are speaking out about this. And so the symposium is Wednesday at 4 o'clock in Hanson Hall 108. And so we'll provide a link to the flyer here soon, hopefully. But thank you so much, guys.
All right, thank you all. And Anthony, sorry I missed your hand, but we will get that information and provide it out for folks so they should be able to join or get more information. And then, yes, we'll go on our break. Thank you again for the three of you. Amazing work. All right, so I think from here, for the participants of the meeting, we are going to take a break. It is currently 10:30, and we will come back in 10 minutes at 10:40 for the return for our final presentation. So if you'll go ahead and take a break and then join back with us at 10:40. Thanks, everyone.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us. Before I introduce our next presentation, I just want to express my sincere appreciation for the three students who just presented and the other people they represent. I am very glad that they're excuse me, that they're not just students at the University of Minnesota, but that they are students in the College of Liberal Arts. They represent what we do, and so very proud of their work. And yeah, so I noted in our office's recent newsletter that I've been thinking a lot about the importance of self-care for those who are actively engaged in advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice, as well as those whose very identities present various challenges as they navigate their day-to-day lives in the college, at the U, in the cities, in Minnesota, in our country, in our world. We will explore how to be intentional about taking care of ourselves during turbulent times in this next presentation. The turbulence that many of us feel on a daily basis, sometimes due to our identities, sometimes due to the issues we care about, sometimes as a result of both. And as the current event, or as current events show, we are going to be flying through, quote, rough air for a while. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Stephanie Shively, Wellbeing instructor from the Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Emilius, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. Before I get going, I'd love to take a moment to kind of introduce my background, for one, because it's pertinent to CLA, but also because I think you have the right to get to decide whether or not you want to listen to what I have to say. First, I will say I use she, her pronouns, and also I am, for anybody who may want additional information, I am a middle-aged white woman with long brown curly hair, and I am in front of a background of blue decorative painted doors. So a little bit about me. I have a little bit of an unusual background, much like our first speaker. My pathway towards the present was kind of meandering and a little unusual. So my undergraduate degrees were in anthropology and literature. And then I went on and I got a doctorate in the medical humanities, which is a little unusual. It was actually at the University of Texas Medical Branch down in Galveston. Only doctorate in medical humanities program in the country at the time, and it no longer exists in its previous form. It's now a bioethics program, so it's kind of a unique thing. And if you're not familiar with it, you're not alone. We were an interdisciplinary program, and for me, my studies included narratives of mental illness, history of medicine, medical anthropology, and bioethics, which is heavily influenced by philosophy. So very much grounded in the liberal arts. And I wrote my dissertation and did my doctoral work on the traumatization of clinicians through the practice of medicine. So I worked in and around that field for about a decade, focusing on clinician burnout and distress. And then the work that I did during the pandemic specifically, I worked with the Minnesota Medical Association. I interviewed mid and upper level leaders around the state and healthcare organizations around the state on what were they doing to address burnout and distress. What worked, what didn't work, how can we come together and not try to reinvent the wheel? And one of the things that I really found was a lot of people who were hungry, who were in need to be able to tell their stories. And stories are really what brings me to this work. They're what's inspired me for as long as I can possibly remember being conscious. And I found people who really needed to be witnessed. And I felt really drawn to want to do more direct work with those people. And so I made the decision to go back to school. I had moved to Minnesota actually during a conference while in grad school, fell in love with the city and was like, I need to be here. So I'm a Minneapolitan by choice. I came here while still doing my doctorate and finished it from afar. And it really meant a lot to be able to become a student of the University of Minnesota in the College of Liberal Arts. I got a master's in educational psychology with a focus in counselor education. I am now a clinical mental health counselor, and I work at with clinician distress and burnout, academic distress and burnout, and also look very much at the intersection of that with neurodiversity, because I have a personal passion for working with neurodiversity. I am a neurospicy human myself. I am particularly interested in late diagnosed ADHD and ASD. I find that there's a lot of crossover. So that is what brings me into this work. I now work with the Bakken Center for Spirituality and Healing. Started as a student, fell in love with that program itself, and have taught academic courses in narrative and well-being, academic courses in executive functioning for neurodiversity. And the work I do now is really with the business development and community relations side, because, and I think this is in line with some of our other speakers today, I feel as though I don't just want to research this work. I would like to be able to engage with the community. I think that the work in counseling really informs that for me, but I love working with individuals in the community and community ed, with whether that is within our university community or the broader community at large. So that's a little bit about me. It's a little bit about my background. When Emilius and Adriana spoke to me about coming to talk with all of you today, we wanted to talk a little bit about resilience and resistance and what has happened during Metro Surge. And I decided that I thought the best way to approach this is actually to present a version of a presentation that I created during Metro Surge. When it started, we had some of our partners and our clients reach out and say, hey, we could really use some support in terms of how to support our community at large, but also our employees, our community members. And so I put this presentation together originally to be able to support those colleagues and those partners. And very quickly afterwards, it expanded into a webinar. So the Bakken Center did put together a webinar to try and provide some of this information if it would be at all useful to the larger community. I was humbled. We had over 1,500 people register for that webinar in the matter of about a week. More than 800 people showed up live, if I'm remembering the numbers correctly. And what was really touching too was that it wasn't just people from our community. We had people from around the world who showed up. We then transformed that and tried to move that into a website offering to the community at large, which I will be offering information on, which is You Do Matter Minnesota. But that is kind of the grounding for this presentation. So if you'd be willing to please move forward to the next slide, and we can actually skip the next slide because y'all did such a wonderful job of setting the space. The way I usually like to start this is to ask what well-being means to you. Now, based on the time we have today, I am going to skip over that part because I'd love to be able to engage in this, but this is generally a 1 hour long presentation, and we're going to try and keep it short. And the Bakken Center, if you are not familiar, the Bakken Center has a model for well-being that I really love because I worked in and around this work for a long time before I realized use the term, and this is something that a lot of us do, we use the term well-being without really fully exploring what it means. So this is a model for well-being that Dr. Mary Jo Kreitzer and some of the other brilliant people at the center that I have the privilege to work with put together. And the way I like to think of this, it speaks to the fact that well-being is not a unidimensional thing. Right. So it's made up of a lot of different factors. I have a colleague who likes to think of this as a wheel with different spokes, and these different factors are the different spokes of the wheel. I actually prefer a metaphor of a spider web. So if you think about a spider web, right, if these different factors are the areas where that spider web connects, right, so the more areas where you have connection and the more investment you put in strengthening those connections, the stronger your overall spider web is. If it's only really connected in one point, it's kind of a pathetic spider web. It's gonna be like floating around in the wind, not really catching any insects. The other reason that I like that metaphor is that if certain factors of our well-being, if certain areas weaken or maybe are damaged, when we are able to invest in the other areas of our well-being, the other factors of our well-being, then that can help to pick up the slack. So for a lot of us in our community, our safety may have been damaged or it may have been put under threat. And one of the things that I'm very grateful for in being a member of this community was to see how the community stepped up to try and take care of each other when our safety and when our emotional well-being, when our emotional and psychological health was being put under threat because of our lack of security. So this is to speak to, and if you have any more interest in this, please, I encourage you to visit the Center for Spirituality and Healing's website to look into the well-being model. If you'd like to move forward, please, the next slide. Next thing I like to ask is what disrupt our well-being? right? And usually we'll have a long conversation about lack of balance, maybe when certain areas of that are put under stress. But stress is the most common response that I hear from people. And I like to really focus on the fact that stress itself is not a bad thing, right? Stress itself is a natural response to threat or to change or to uncertainty. It's also a way that we help ourselves grow. So when I go and I lift weights, right, I'm actively putting my body under stress in order to grow my muscles or strengthen. What we usually mean when we talk about stress as a factor that harms our well-being is actually distress. So it's an amount of stress that is beyond our capacity to hold, or an amount of stress that we don't have adequate tools to cope with. And any amount of regular stress that we may be under, or distress that we may be under, I think it's important to point out that it can be impacted exponentially by factors in our community such as turbulence, uncertainty, divisiveness. And here in Minneapolis recently and around the country, we've experienced a high degree of that. I think that pretty much anybody, regardless of your background, regardless of what your political affiliation may be, I would hope can agree that our world's been going through a lot of turbulence and uncertainty and divisiveness, but there's been an exceptionally high amount recently. Next slide, please. So when we talk about basic human stress response, right, a lot of times we think about fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And if I were to ask how many people here are familiar with that, I'm guessing I'd see a lot of hands, or maybe at least fight, flight, right? And what I like to kind of point out and to think about with this is that sometimes our fight, flight response, right, is very healthy and adaptive. And this is something that I was thinking about when I was originally putting this presentation together and thinking, how best can I try and provide something that might be of use and support to the community? I was thinking about the fact that often many of the people during Operation Metro Surge were experiencing situations in which that healthy and adaptive response to run away, to protect yourself, that healthy and adaptive response, due to circumstances, found themselves in situations in which that response might put them or somebody else in danger. I should say us or someone else in danger, right? So sometimes it is very healthy and natural, but what do we do when we find ourselves stuck in that situation? And that's what I wanted to try and offer, were tools that we could use. The previous presenters or student presenters who were absolutely brilliant, and I am incredibly grateful for the work that you were doing. I heard you talking about how do the trainings that you were doing for people to know what your rights are and also know how to protest, how to observe, and how to try and keep yourself safe in those situations. And often part of that process is knowing how do we down-regulate a very natural response if we find ourselves in a situation where it's unhealthy. I want to name that also sometimes that response can get stuck in the on position, whether that's because we are struggling with something like generalized anxiety disorder or a trauma response. And these tools can also be helpful for that. Additionally, these are tools that can be helpful across the board when you experience heightened stress. So while some people feel as though we have moved out of the same period of crisis, I think that's debatable, right? These tools are still helpful when it comes to regulating our stress response when we are engaging with finals and exams, right? Or also regulating our stress response when we might be in disagreements in our personal life, maybe a fight with a significant other or a friend. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to start by geeking out about the science for a second, and I hope that you will bear with me for this. I think this is important because I think as mental health provider, a lot of us kind of do a disservice to those we talk to, in not really explaining the why of why some of these tools work. And so a lot of mental health providers will kind of toss tools at people, but not really explain the why. And I think the why is incredibly important because it's what empowers us to be able to tailor tools so that they can work for us specifically, but also to understand how they're supposed to work. And if they are not working in a particular way, to be able to change them or to be able to find another tool that might work for it. So I really like to kind of go over this and to understand the why so that you have the most ability to adapt and alter and change these tools. So first, understanding what happens in our nervous system when we experience stress, right? Because our nervous system is part of what helps us to navigate stress. Stress, usually we talk about it as occurring in 3 different ways. So you have acute stress, which would be more circumstantial or transient stress that might also include positive stress, right? If we put ourselves under stress because we are trying to learn something new, or when I mentioned lifting weights, right? That would be an acute version of stress. It's not always bad. Episodic stress might be a form of stress that we experience repeatedly, whether because we have kind of repeated exposures to it or based on certain ways that we engage with the world. For instance, if you have public speaking anxiety, but have made speaking to large groups of people part of your professional role in life, right? I put myself under episodic stress all the time. Or if you happen to be a procrastinator who might use cortisol and adrenaline to supplement low dopamine in order to help you to motivate yourself, which is like a big part of neurodiversity, but not exclusive to neurodiversity. That's another form of episodic stress. And then finally, chronic stress. Chronic stress usually has to do with situations that are going on in our life or in the environment around us, right? They tend to be more long-term and kind of omnipresent. That might be due to things like chronic illness or to going through life events like a divorce or a breakup. It also can have to do with things like discriminatory stress, which can exist kind of in the environment around you. And chronic stress tends to exacerbate and exponentially increase all other forms of stress, right? Because they're not mutually exclusive. They can happen all together and they can increase each other. So our autonomic nervous system is what helps us to navigate this, right? So our autonomic nervous system, we generally think of it as having 2 different responses. You have your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. So our sympathetic is like the gas pedal. This would be the fight flight, right? This is the part that gets us ready to protect ourselves, gets us ready to run away, gets us ready to maybe fight off if we need to. And a few things happen during that sympathetic response. Our body pulls blood flow from our extremities and from parts that it thinks is not necessary to protect ourselves. So pulls it away from our digestive tract, from our reproductive tract, and moves it to our heart, our lungs, our major muscle groups, right, to get ready to protect ourselves. So if that's the gas pedal, then the parasympathetic is like the brakes. And that's really the rest and digest. That's the, hey, everybody, we're safe, we're calm, we can send our blood flow back to our GI, we can send it back to our reproductive organs, right? And we can be calm and regulated. So, and I actually used that term incorrectly. We can be calm. Regulation is not about getting rid of our sympathetic response. Because remember, if you find yourself in a situation of danger, if I walk outside and maybe a large dog comes towards me aggressively, right? I want that sympathetic response to help me to be able to hopefully get away or to protect myself. Regulation is really about finding the best response for the proper moment. Next slide, please. Okay, so we think about this concept of flipping your lid. I don't know if you've ever heard it before. I thought that it was part of the vernacular, and then I mentioned it to a group of students the other day, and they hadn't heard it. So maybe this is an older phrase. I'm kind of noticing my age here. Flip your lid. I love this analogy because I think it gives us a really good idea of understanding what happens when we have a heightened stress response, crisis, or trauma. Now, if you go back 1 slide, please, I'm going to refer to that brain image, right? And I'm going to use my hands. So I have my hands in front of me, left hand in a fist, right hand wrapped across. So my left hand, this fist, is basically representing the older parts of our brain. So we got our brainstem, our amygdala, pituitary gland, hippocampus, our cerebellum, to a degree our hypothalamus. And then this is the part that is responsive for fight, flight, freeze, fawn, for a lot of those automatic responses. This is also considered, some would call it our lizard brain, right? I don't love that term, but I do think it can be helpful for us to understand what we're talking about. And then wrapped across the top, we have our cerebral cortex, and more specifically, our prefrontal cortex. This is where everything like logic, rationality, self-talk, goals, a lot of the things that we call higher thought, that lives up here. Okay, so next slide, please. There's a thing that happens when we have a heightened stress response, which is the message gets to this part of our brain, our older part of our brain, about a split second before the rest of it. And it responds and it flips our lid. And what happens is our prefrontal cortex basically goes offline. So if you've ever had a situation where you're like, I know what's going on, I know what I want to do, and then maybe you get in a fight with a significant other, or you get in front of the test, and that stress response floods you, and all of a sudden your mind goes blank. Or all of a sudden you're responding the way you didn't want to. That's what happened. Your lid is flipped. Basically, all of that stuff is up here and it's offline. So what do we do in those moments? What we're doing in those moments is we're trying to get our lid back down. And the way that we do that, because we can't use this part, right? The way that we do that is to use our body. So we use somatic tools or body tools to try and bring our lid down. And then once it's down and we have our whole brain online, we use that prefrontal cortex and our cognitive tools to keep it down. So that's our goal here. Next slide, please. So to understand how we do that, how do we get that? How do we use our body to do it? We have to understand how the vagus nerve works. Our vagus nerve is like this highway that connects our brain to the rest of our body, the rest of our nervous system. So if you've ever gotten nervous and gotten nauseous, or if you've ever gotten angry and your heart started to race, thank you, vagus nerve. Okay. Most people think of the vagus nerve kind of like if you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, where you have kind of the emotions up there at the command center and they're pressing buttons and they send alarms down. That's generally how a lot of people think of it. So our brain is sending messages to our body. What's cool is it's actually more of like a two-way highway, which means that we can also use our body to send messages back up to our brain. That's the way that somatic regulation works. So I like to think of it kind of like in one way, we're reaching up that vagus nerve to kind of flip off that alarm to go, hey, actually, we're safer than we think we are. Okay, so that's one way we do it. We send a counter message up. For instance, look how calm and regulated my breathing is. We must be safer than we think we are. The other way is to actually tickle the vagus nerve, which is super cool. Nerding out for a second there. But if you actually tickle your vagus nerve, you can trigger your parasympathetic nervous system. So people who have panic disorder that's unresponsive to medication, they can actually implant a stimulator that'll tickle it, and that can help to trigger that parasympathetic. Next slide, please. Okay, and we use mindful awareness in order to be able to do this. The Bakken Center is centered around mindfulness and the ways that mindfulness can help us. And mindfulness is, at its very core, it is an awareness of our present moment, experiences with open curiosity and a non-judgmental attitude. So being able to pay attention to what's going on in ourselves, to be able to recognize when we're in fight or flight, or recognize what's happening in our body, offers us an ability to be able to do something about it. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you a handful of tools here. I'm going to go quickly through them. If you'd like to see more, or if you'd like to go through them with more time and experience, they are all available on the You Do Matter Minnesota website. But I do want to mention that with all of these tools, if you have a heart condition or any medical condition that could negatively be impacted by modulating your heart rate, please consult a doctor before using these, because we want them to be safe and helpful. I don't want them to cause any additional harm. Next slide, please. So first, we're going to talk about box breathing. Box breathing, if you've ever done counseling or any kind of emotional regulation work, you've probably heard of box breathing. Box breathing is found to be incredibly effective for helping to regulate and to down-regulate our sympathetic nervous system response. And that's really for a couple of reasons. For one, box breathing, what you're going to do first is you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold that breath for a count of 4, out for a count of 4, and then hold your out breath for a count of 4. That's it. It's very, very simple. You can do it over and over again. If you see my hands, you'll see why we call it box breathing. It's also called square breathing or 4x4 breathing. One colleague calls it circle breathing, but I think I can't show that one as well. And the reason that this works is, for one, we're doing something very simple, something that we can focus on and ground our attention on. Just count to 4 over and over again, right? We're also sending that counter message up our vagus nerve that says, look at how calm and regulated my breathing is. We must be safer than you think we are, brain. So let's try and bring that lid down. Additionally, if we breathe down towards our hips and we engage our diaphragm, we do diaphragmatic breathing, then we're also triggering that vagus nerve to a small amount. So we're tickling it. Just a little bit of a twofer. What I will say with this is that with box breathing, with any of these tools, experiment with them and modify them if you need. So I'll be honest, box breathing, incredibly effective. They teach it to the special forces because it is so useful. I hate it. It's hard for me because I am somebody who has a pretty slow natural breathing rate. And so box breathing actually feels a bit like hyperventilation to me. So if you experiment with box breathing, you don't like it because maybe you hyperfixate on counting, Or maybe the breathing exercise. Sometimes when I do it, I'll feel like, oh, do I remember how to breathe? I'm not sure I remember how to breathe. Right? Or if that pace is too quick for you, you can modify it. Doesn't have to be 4x4, it could be 6x6. Right? If you don't want to count, in, hold, out, hold. What's important is not to do it in a particular way. What's important is to find out how it works best for you and then to practice it. Because with all of these tools, it's important to practice them so that when you need them, you can access them. Because if you wait until you need something in order for your brain to reach out to grab it, that's going to be a hard time to be able to access it. Next slide, please. Cold stimulation is one that I love. I am not originally from Minnesota, so I know a lot of people do polar plunges. If you are one of them, all the respect to you. Cold stimulation can have a lot of benefits for mood improvement, releasing endorphins, for improving heart rate variability, which helps with regulation. Cold stimulation can also help us to ground ourselves in the present moment. So for instance, when I work with people who are experiencing overstimulation or who might be experiencing dysregulation based on neurodiversity, right? Sometimes it can be helpful to use cold to snap ourselves into the present and to ground ourselves, right? So I have a colleague who will encourage clients to go and stand on the cold cement outside, as long as it's not negative 30 degrees outside, right? But stand on the cold cement helps to ground you in the present moment, right? Cold showers as well. That can be a really great way of being able to get that endorphin rush, ground yourself in the present and in your body. The one that I think is so cool, and I've got a little prop here, is that we can also use cold stimulation connected to that vagus nerve. Because if you remember, if we tickle it, we can trigger the parasympathetic. So the vagus nerve comes from our brain, down our neck, past our vocal cords, and through our chest and into our abdomen. So these areas where it's close to the surface, we can actually use cold stimulation. If you imagine that this is a cold compress or a cold pack, by putting cold on our neck, here or here, or our chest, here or here, we can cause vasoconstriction, where our blood vessels are basically like, oh, it's cold. And then that vasoconstriction can tickle the vagus nerve and cause a parasympathetic response. So part of the reason I love this is ever since I was a little girl, right, I have done this when I was stressed out. Well, if you remember, sympathetic nervous system response pulls blood flow away from our hands. So often when we get really stressed, our hands get cold. Putting cold hands on our neck can cause that vasoconstriction and can help calm us down. So it's the wisdom of the body. Listening to our body often knows and can tell us what it is that we need. Next slide, please. Humming and gargling. You noticed I mentioned that the vagus nerve goes right by our voice box, which means that vibrations from gargling, from humming, from chanting, from singing can also trigger that parasympathetic response. So if you think about how many different spiritual practices, religious practices incorporate humming, chanting, singing, it makes a lot of sense because that can help to release that feeling of calm in our body. So again, I have over the last 4 months been doing a lot of humming and singing just throughout the course of my day, practicing that and practicing that vagus nerve stimulation. Next slide, please. Finally, splashing cold water in your face. You probably heard this one before. Likelihood is you didn't know that the reason that splashing cold water on our face can help to calm us down is that it can trigger the mammalian dive reflex, which is a reflex that's found in most animals that breathe air, specifically mammals. And essentially I like to think of it as if you go underwater, your body basically says, oh crap, I don't know when I'm coming up again. Better calm everything down and conserve as much energy as possible to make it until we can come back up. And so ideally, putting our face in a bowl of ice water, right? That would be the way that we would ideally stimulate it. But I don't know about you, I don't carry a bowl of ice water around very often. And so what we're trying to do is really expose the trigeminal nerve to cold. So cold over eyes and nose, paired with holding your breath for about 30 seconds. So you can take a cold pack like this, right? Hold your breath for about 30 seconds. If you don't have a cold pack that you're walking around with, right, going to the bathroom and putting some cold water on your face. Or in Minnesota, right, we can get some snow and ice, melt it in our hands, over our eyes and our nose, hold our breath. Similarly, cold hands from a stress response in a pinch over your nose and your eyes, and hold your breath for approximately 30 seconds. Okay, next slide, please. Trying to be thoughtful of time. I want to note that part of the reason that we're doing this is to provide freedom of choice. This is a quote that is a modification of a Viktor Frankl quote by Dr. Rollo May, which I really love, which says that freedom is the ability to pause between a stimulus and a response, and in that pause to choose. That's the reason behind these tools. That is the reason that I'm hoping to be able to offer these tools to as many people as I can. Next slide, please. Because none of these tools are going to change the circumstances or be a magic solve to what's happening. And I wish they could be. If I could hand out a button to cause that, I would. But what they can do is they can bring your lid down so that you can function with your whole brain. And that's the intention behind these, is so that you can make decisions with your whole brain from a place of intent rather than a place of reactivity. Next slide, please. I would love to be able to spend a little more time on this slide. This is a word about the different forms of trauma that a lot of people experience. Because one of the things I experience most commonly as a counselor is people coming and telling me, what I experienced doesn't count. Right? What my friend happened, that was trauma. What happened to my parent or to my loved one or to my child, that was trauma. But what I experienced didn't count, did it? And that breaks my heart. And I also think it speaks to the fact that we don't have enough recognition of the different forms of trauma that exist. I would really love to be able to spend the time to go over this with you. I will let you know that this is available on the You Do Matter Minnesota website. But I want to speak to the fact that moral injury in particular is a form of trauma that a lot of people are experiencing right now. Moral injury is traumatization from betrayal of what's right by a person in a position of authority during a high-stakes situation that results in the harm of someone or a group of people, and usually includes someone feeling like they've been made complicit in that in some way. Now, I'll let you sit with that for a minute. A lot of people that I have been talking to have said that they've been experiencing a high degree of moral injury and also a high degree of compassion fatigue, in addition to all of the rest of this. Right? And I think that by speaking about the different forms of trauma that people can and do experience, and we have been experiencing in our community, that can help us to understand that we're not alone. Next slide, please. Because one of the most crucial aspects of trauma is that trauma is exacerbated by feeling isolated, by feeling trapped, and by feeling helpless. So many people today have talked about the importance of being able to come together in community, to be able to push back on isolation, to be able to share our stories with one another. And I want to highlight and emphasize that that is not just an important thing to do, it's a healing thing to do. Coming together in community is the primary way to address moral injury. It's also the primary way to address compassion fatigue. By learning how to be present with one another, to witness one another, and to be with one another, and to also know that we are not alone. I'm going to go ahead and skip past the last couple of slides so that we can move to next slide, please. The word about resilience. That's the one that I wanted to stop on. Because mindful regulation and stress when we're talking about resilience, we are talking about giving space to ourselves to be able to take care of ourselves, to take care of our community. And I named this presentation Resilience as Resistance, because I want to name the fact that a lot of the times when we talk about resilience, the workshops and the presentations are all about trying to provide information for people to make themselves a more resistant and resilient cog in a system that can feel as though it's built to destroy us, in a system that's built to kind of break us down. And I want to name that can feel really quite harmful. And part of the reason that I do this work is because I feel like it's important to also name the fact that resilience doesn't have to be that. Resilience can also be about trying to help ourselves to be more resistant so that we can work to change that system. That's why I do this work. That's why I'm passionate about this work. And I'm hopeful that these tools can help you in that way of being able to resist a system that might not always be here to support us, so that we can change it and transform it into one that can. So we can jump past to the question section now, please. And I do always try to make my presentations a little extra so that this information will be provided for you and you can explore it. But apologies, I tried to make that as fast as I could, but we didn't quite get through all of it.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think it's just challenging in general. We're always crunched for time in our meetings. We try, but we understand. So we maybe have time for one question, and then we will have folks reach out to Stephanie or the center for additional questions and support. And you did include a lot of really strong information to this to us through the slide deck, and people have access to that too. So anyone with a question that they might have that I can pose, let me know.
While people are thinking, I will mention that on that slide deck, there is the sign for the You Do Matter Minnesota website along with a QR code. So if you would like to explore any of the information further, it is all available there.
Thank you. And just also thank you for your presentation while we're waiting on the chat if anyone has questions, but thank you for your presentation. And I think really just offering some mindfulness practices, some kind of like somatic experiences that we can, or like practices we can lean into, because I know we often get into a space of like doom scrolling or having these situations that come up, and the box breathing. I'm not a fan of being cold, so I probably won't do those things, but like there's a multitude of ways of trying to help regulate, cold water.
Ice water is actually a great way to stimulate that vagus nerve from the inside if you're not like a cold person, which I respect.
Okay. No, that's great, because I'll use that instead.
Exactly.
But I'm not standing outside barefoot on any kind of cement.
Super fair.
But okay, let's see. Alex, thank you for presenting. I'm hoping we continue to bring this into our spaces. It's more so of a comment than, okay, great. Yep, I have triggers. Yes, particularly with drones and helicopters due to occupation. I'm guessing delayed responses. I hope so, Alex. I hope so for a lot of folks. I know sounds can be very triggering for a lot of people. I know post George Floyd, I would be very alert to even just police stops on the street, and having to know that, like, is this person going to survive this encounter, particularly if they're a person of color? And so, yeah, there's a lot more in terms of practicing and helping us regulate some of these feelings that we can lean into in those moments where we can feel our body responding to our brain responding to our body. So, yeah, thank you for that.
And comment. I will add as kind of a shout out, it's not the type of work that I do, but I have a lot of really gifted colleagues who do. For anybody who may be experiencing effects of trauma right now, accelerated resolution therapy is a form of trauma processing. It's based off of EMDR, which is kind of the gold standard for trauma processing. But EMDR can take a very long time. And ART, accelerated resolution therapy, can be a very short version of it. Also, for people in CLA, you might be very interested that it combines bilateral stimulation with narrative reprocessing. And so anybody who might be looking for some relief and some help, that can be a really accessible version as well. So trying to let as many people know about that as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I just started EMDR therapy in the last month. It's been a wild ride.
It's no joke. I've been there myself, and I commend your bravery. I hope it's a good experience for you.
Also, just to normalize that we need this. So yeah, I think that's great. Well, I don't see any other questions. Stephanie, thank you. Amelia's mentioned that we're going to try to extend some of this into kind of our programming initiatives over the next few years. So we'll be in touch. I appreciate your presentation and your mindfulness about our time, because I know that can just add a little more stress than you don't want. But thank you so much for your presentation, your care, these practices, and the tips that we can do to kind of increase our own regulation and manage stress in these really stressful times. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and we will move on to our community sharing portion of our session. Let's see.